We are in the middle of an absolute AI gold rush. I mean, money is pouring into data centers at a rate we have never seen before. But here's the question. Is this incredible boom actually built to last? Or are we repeating one of the biggest financial blunders in modern history?
To give you a sense of the scale, just look at this number, $1 trillion. That's the projected spending on AI infrastructure by the year 2030. It is a bet so massive, it's kind of hard to even wrap your head around. But make no mistake, a bet is exactly what it is. And that really brings us to the big question for today. What if this whole gold rush is based on a shaky assumption we've seen play out before? What if we're in the middle of repeating a huge and very expensive mistake?
Okay, so let's get into it. To really understand the risk here, we have to first understand the unbelievable optimism that's driving this whole thing. And it's all built on one single foundational belief.
And this is it. The core assumption holding up that trillion-dollar forecast is the idea that our demand for AI compute, the raw processing power for AI, is going to be pretty much infinite. The theory is that our need for it will just keep growing, exponentially, forever. And that big assumption breaks down into these 4 pillars. The thinking is AI models are just going to get bigger and bigger. Every single digital product out there will eventually have AI baked into it. AI-powered inference will become a constant background thing like electricity. And every major country is going to want its own sovereign AI. Now, all of these things might actually end up being true, but the timing of it all, that's the dangerous part. This feeling of just boundless, guaranteed growth, it's not new. In fact, it's an almost perfect echo of the dot-com bubble, specifically the boom and spectacular bust of the undersea fiber optic cable companies back in the late 90s.
Back then, the logic was identical. People believed internet traffic would double every few months, forever. So, fueled by hype and a ton of debt, companies laid a massive amount of undersea cables. But when all that supply hit the market at once, the price of bandwidth totally collapsed. We're talking over 90%. The revenue they were counting on just vanished, but the debt didn't, which led to this wave of massive bankruptcies for companies like Global Crossing.
So here's the really crucial point. The companies that built all of that amazing infrastructure, they went bust. Their shareholders got completely wiped out. Fortunes were just gone. But the infrastructure itself, those fiber optic cables sitting at the bottom of the ocean, they weren't useless at all. In fact, they became the foundation for the internet we all use today for everything from streaming movies to cloud computing, and yep, even for AI. So the bet on the future was right, but the timing and the way they financed it were a total disaster. And this table just lays out the parallels so clearly. The narrative of infinite demand, it's the same. The fuel is a bit different. It's giant company balance sheets instead of pure debt, but it's still a massive capital bet. And most importantly, that fragile metric, it's the same idea, a unit cost that could just suddenly and dramatically collapse. Back then, it was the cost of bandwidth. Today, it's the cost of a single AI calculation, a flop. No, this isn't just some historical coincidence. It's actually a predictable pattern. It's a classic capital expenditure or CAPEX trap that seems to show up whenever a new, game-changing infrastructure technology comes along. So let's just walk through the 5 steps of this trap. It always starts with these extreme expectations. Then, early on, you get bottlenecks in hardware and talent that make everything super expensive to build. Then, reflexively, people mistake those high prices for high value, which just encourages even more spending. But then, the silent killer kicks in, the learning curve. The technology gets better, it gets cheaper, and the cost to build new stuff collapses. But those early builders, they're stuck with their expensive fixed costs, and that mismatch is what gets them. So you're probably thinking, okay, the parallels are a little scary, but surely the giants building AI today are smarter than that. Surely this time is different. Well, in one very, very important way, it is. So here's the key difference. The biggest builders today, the hyperscalers like Google, Microsoft, Amazon, they are also their own biggest customers. See, the dot-com cable companies had to sell their bandwidth on an open, commodity market. But today's giants are vertically integrated. They use the AI capacity they build for their own products. And that makes them way more protected from a price collapse. Okay, so if the biggest players are pretty safe, does that mean there's no bubble at all? Well, not quite. It just means the risk is all concentrated somewhere else. So where is the real bubble? The real risk is right here. It's with the players who look exactly like those doomed cable companies from 1999. We're talking about the second-tier cloud providers, all those GPU as a service startups, and the sovereign AI projects that are being built more for national pride than for profit. They don't have those captive customers, and they are completely exposed if the price of compute suddenly tanks.
So, how is this whole story likely to play out? Well, if history is our guide, the road ahead probably has a few predictable twists and turns.
We're probably in the overbuild phase right now, through about 2026. After that, we get the squeeze, as tech breakthroughs and just massive supply cause the price of compute to drop hard. This will probably lead to a period of consolidation around 2028 and beyond, where a lot of those at-risk companies will either fail or get bought up for cheap. And AI infrastructure will just become another boring, essential utility.
And the final verdict in all of this will probably sound eerily familiar. In 10 years, we'll all look back and say, yeah, of course we needed all this AI capacity. It powers everything. We just didn't need all of those companies that rushed in to build it first.
And that's the ultimate takeaway here. In these huge infrastructure shifts, the winning strategy is rarely being the first one in the door. It's usually being the fast follower who waits for the costs to collapse and then scales up with brutal efficiency. So the final question is, who's patiently waiting in the wings right now?